there are a lot of other experts out there that probably know way more than I do. But if I don't have the answer, I will make sure to get you connected with someone who does for sure.
Thank you. Well, I say it's about five after, so we might as well get going here. So, hi everybody. I'm pretty sure everyone here knows me, Amy, the board chair and co-founder of KARES, and I'd like to welcome Amanda Moore from the Angelman Syndrome Foundation. She's the CEO, and very happy to have her here to talk about adult transition guide that they've created for their patient advocacy group, and she's going to share some tips with us. So, Amanda, go ahead and tell us some more about yourself and about Angelman syndrome, if you could.
Yeah, well, thank you guys so much for being flexible and for having me. I am really always really excited to talk about this topic, even though my son, Jackson, who lives with Angelman syndrome, is only 10. The one thing that went through my mind this day I got the diagnosis was what's going to happen when I'm gone. Like literally, I was thinking all the way that far out. I try not to let myself spiral, but the reality is that we as parents have to be thinking of that early on, especially with the lack of services that are out there, the maze of navigation of trying to understand what is out there, what services are there, guardianship, all of the above. And so I will tell you my journey of trying to understand more about the adult transition actually came when I started this position. Jackson got diagnosed when he was about 18 months. About a week later, that week, I called the Angelman Syndrome Foundation and basically said, how can I help? Joined the board a week later, and then about 9 months later, became the CEO of the foundation. And in that transition, the first thing I wanted to do was understand from the community what the needs were. The foundation was kind of at a place, it's been around for 31 years. It kind of, stalled a little bit. And I had been hearing a lot from the community that we weren't meeting the needs of the community. Did a survey, about 1,000 people responded, and they weren't bots, Amy. They were actual people who responded to that survey. And the overwhelming theme of that survey was the caregivers for someone with Angelman who was an adult felt completely unsupported, completely kind of thrown out of the organization. All we thought about was newly diagnosed and the cure, all these themes coming up of my loved one with Angelman syndrome who's an adult gets nothing, has nothing, and a lot of frustration. So we started the journey as an organization to determine what we needed to do to change that. And that kind of started our journey with a lot of the resources I'm going to share with you guys tonight. We launched something called AS Grows Up, which is, the umbrella we use that we put all of our adult resources and support in. However, the reason why we called it AS Grows Up is we do very much communicate to the whole community that it doesn't really matter what age or where you're at in your journey, this stuff is important for you to at least listen to, hear, be prepared for. You can never have too much information on this journey in order to set up something that is the best for you and your family and your loved one. And so the tool I want to show you tonight was kind of also birthed from we have a clinic network. We have 35 clinics in the United States, nine globally. And once again, what we heard very loudly was there was no kind of healthcare transition or clinicians that understood Angelman syndrome. Only 60% of our clinics would actually see adults, but only up until 26, and then they had to transfer into adult care. And so we started thinking, okay, as we try to build our adult neurologist, our adult, GI specialist, we're still in, I'm sure, I don't know if you guys deal with this, but we're still in the discovery phases, and we have been for like 4 years of trying to understand dental because there's just not many experts out there when it comes to dental work. But as we try to build those experts within the network, we said we need to have some sort of tool that these families can use for a doctor who would not know anything, as they transition their care, to where the pediatric neurologist that they've been working with for so long can help put together this transition guide and make the transition smooth into the adult care. And so I'm going to show you this. And then, Amy, I can also, especially for everyone that's on the call, we actually have some like hard copies of the transition guide. If you send me your address, or if you can get everyone's address, I'll mail everyone a hard copy of the transition guide so you can write in it and you can do
That would
whatever.
be great because we do have a family and science conference coming up in June, so it'd be amazing to be able to hand
Perfect.
those out.
Yes, I'll send a bunch to you.
Thank you.
And they're also obviously online, so and it's edible online as well. So I'll make sure after this to send you all the links and everything that you need for this. But I'm gonna jump into it. It was created by a few clinicians within our Angelman network. They actually did all the work. We kind of took a back seat as far as the first draft creation of the document. We wanted a really clinician's perspective. And then after we had the first draft, we pulled in our adult task force, which are all families in the community, and had them review it, give feedback, add the parent perspective, look at it through a lens of a parent, made a lot of edits. And then we did 2 or 3 focus groups with other families within the community, went through all of it, got their feedback, and then finally came to the edit, or the guide that I will share with you right now, hopefully. So I'm going to show you on, here we go. Let me get from the beginning here. I promise I know how to work this. Here we go. I'm going to just kind of work through the key highlights of the transition guide. But what I want to do is, one, at any point, just interrupt me if you have questions, raise your hand, whatever. I would rather this be a conversation than a lecture by any means. But I'll go through this pretty quickly, but also highlight all the other resources we have, as well as a partnership that we just launched that you all could have the opportunity to be a part of that partnership as well, which we'll talk about. And then I'll open it up for any questions. And so I kind of already talked about this. The toolkit was created to really empower caregivers to help with that transition as much as we can. We know that this is a big step for our families, and we know that there's a lot of complexities around it. So we wanted to make sure that we could take a little bit of burden off of our families. I think all of you who are a caregiver to a loved one with any sort of disability, rare disease, whatever it may be, every single day there seems to be some sort of hurdle or challenge, or something that you're trying to work through. And so if we can kind of take away some of those steps for them to give them a little ease, that's our goal at the foundation, to have something and help families through that process. This is kind of the overall. I'll go through kind of the highlights of this, but this is the overall um, a glossary of what's in there. And so we really wanted to kind of take it from like the caregiver guide and the perspective, to the provider guide and their perspective and their part of it, and then really move into some support on the actual transition, the forms that go along that, the supports and other things for that transition. And then we have a section around legal and planning and all that, all those fun things. So the first section, well, one first, we kind of also gave everyone some tips on this. I think the biggest tip and the thing we heard most from our families is like, this is your process. So the transition guide was created through multiple lenses, but you may have a different way that you want to use the guide. So that's why, one, we created in a PDF. So if you wanted to change, do whatever you want to it, once it's yours, you can do that to make it work for you and your family. We really, really want this guide. It needs to be, it needs to be alongside clinical care. This shouldn't replace your actual clinical care. This should be in partnership with your current clinicians as you're working on transitioning that care into adulthood. And so also, start, but we also, another tip was start by exploring the big picture. So before you're diving in, take a time to review the full toolkit because I think it's like 51 pages, so it can seem like a lot, but knowing that there's like three main sections to go through kind of makes it a little bit easier. So as we start going into the first part, which is the caregiver part, we spent some time on really helping people understand some of the differences in the adult care settings. I haven't shown every single page on here. I'm just kind of highlighting some of the themes. Like I said, you'll have a copy of that, and we would be here all night if I went through all 51 pages. But the goal of going through the caregiver part is we have found that even our caregivers who have been caregiving for 19, 20 plus years still don't understand a lot when it comes to the insurance. They don't understand a lot when it comes to medical transition and what that looks like. So we really, really wanted to help put some narrative out there and helping them understand all the terminology and all the kind of things across the system. So the first few pages talk about insurance, they talk about waivers, especially waivers for adults living with any sort of disability and other items to help families kind of, once again, refamiliarize themselves or for the first time familiarize themselves with what is actually there out to support them. And so so the first section is just kind of knowledge. And then we really wanted to put together something, and this may seem really scary and big. So I want to preface this once again as like this tool is to be used the way you want to use it. There's a lot of parts in here that are for you to fill out and for you to be, to use. And so we really wanted to help people get themselves in the mindset of the questions to think about before transferring care. So as you're moving, well, one, figuring out when transfer of care has to happen. It's different for all hospital systems, right? Some people will see adults up until 26, some it's 21, some it's for the lifetime, which is fantastic. So determining when that is going to happen, is important. And we really, the doctors and the ASF really encourage people to start having that conversation as early as 12 years old of talking to your doctor of like, hey, what is like, we really love you as a neurologist. What is the long-term transition plan? What should we be thinking about? What are some next steps? Can we already go ahead and work with an adult neurologist early on so they can get familiarized with the rare disease? I'm just going to use Angelman syndrome, in this example. Can we get engaged with someone? And then, thinking about these questions to think about. So transition planning process, having conversations with your doctor about, can we schedule a visit early on with a possible neurologist? Can we work together to put together, emergency plans if care falls through? What are other families doing in the area? So these questions are really created to help you start getting into the mindset of what transition will look like for you and your loved one. So there's multiple questions here. Like I said, you'll be able to go through all of them, but we really wanted to help families kind of think about and navigate as we move forward on what that looks like. Part of the toolkit too around the caregiver guide is all these other resources. So all of these resources are available to you all as well. Amy, I can give you all of them. And if you want to rebrand them for your organization and put them out there, that is totally fine. But we've worked on a couple of resources that we have heard from the community in the past 5 or 6 years that they really feel like they needed and wanted. One, if you get a chance, I'll send you this PowerPoint, Amy. You can get it out so people can just click the links. Our AS Grows Up homepage has all these resources on it, but also has multiple webinars for experts all the way from how to do a guardianship, talking about transferring out of the school system into day programs, talking about the different kind of long-term living situations. All these kind of different things are on there for you guys to look at. We also have, and all these individuals are more than happy to talk with anyone. Um, we also have adult housing champions in our community. When I started, and I don't know how it's been for your community, but when I started in this role, talking about moving your loved one with Angelman syndrome out of your home into another situation was very taboo. Like people would pounce on people in the community if they started talking about, I was able to find a really great, group home or shared living situation. People didn't see that and treat that very well, which always really surprised me because I'm not sure what people think we're supposed to do long term. Like the goal would be individuals with Angelman syndrome need lifelong care, 24-hour care a day. They have to be watched. So when we're not here, someone's going to have to do it, right? And so the conversation started changing quite a bit within the community, and it changed to like, oh goodness, we do need this, and now we're panicking. So we spend a lot of time talking with a lot of people in the community to figure out what situations have worked for them. And we've created housing champions under different types of housing situations. So it could be a group home, it could be individualized in-home 24-hour care, it could be a variety of different things. So these people are online. You can reach out to them and say, hey, how did you do it? What was your steps? What did you look for? And then we also have a map on there that maps out different homes and different kind of long-term living arrangements in the US that have worked. We also have a transition to adulthood checklist. And so it's basically a one pager, and it's a checklist of things that you need to be thinking about when it comes to transitioning into adulthood. And the checklist actually starts like at 10 years old and then goes down the path. So the goal was to not make it really scary and big. It's a really great one pager that you can just go through. It's hyperlinked. So if it says something about, start having conversations about special needs trust, you can click it and learn more about how you can do that. We also have a comprehensive care binder for adults, for caregivers of adults living with Angelman syndrome and for younger ones. It's literally, I hate to use the term, but it's kind of the term we hear a lot. It's kind of like a death binder. Like if I got hit by a bus today, there's a binder there of everything that someone would need for Jackson, right? All of his, his genetic reports, his medical stuff, everything. So we kind of put together a template that people can use and get that off and create their care binder for that. Things also you see here, we have a lot of YouTube playlists around these different topics. We have adults with Angelman FAQ. So it's literally every question that you can think about and it's been answered. And then we also have moving to we have the care healthcare toolkit, which we're talking about. And then we also have multiple kind of check boxes on when you're going to visit different day programs or group homes or facilities, things to think about, things to ask, questions, so forth and so on. A lot of resources there for you. So all of these kind of fall under that first bucket of getting prepared for the caregiver part when it comes to transition, even outside of healthcare. What are the other things that we need to be thinking about as we are transitioning out? Oh, sorry. And so the next part of it is all about the provider, and they've got the heavy lift in all of this. So the clinicians put together kind of a welcome of, this is, thanking them for committing to supporting this person. We really hopefully, there are a good amount of clinicians out there that will be willing to sit down and help. It doesn't have to happen in one visit. It could be months and months and months of putting together this transition. But the hope is that you guys work together, and this first couple of pages kind of help the clinician understand, and it's from another clinician to another clinician on how this works and what this would look like. And so all these I'm going to show you now are really what the clinician would work on with the family. So looking at the transition readiness assessment. So looking at those different ages to determine the readiness of these individuals and the readiness of them moving on into a different, into a different adult care provider or whatever it may be. And so really the goal of this, it should be maintained and it should be updated annually by the parent or the caregiver with input from the clinician as much as possible. We're lucky that we have a lot of experts in Angelman syndrome, centers of excellence, and a lot of our families go to those. And so those doctors have been trained on this full toolkit and will be using it with them. But for those who don't go to our centers of excellence, there's a really good step-by-step here in helping people get through that. Also, some of these things that are on here are, part of also this idea of this kind of death binder. So you have a whole part where you can add your provider master list. So looking at who your current doctor is, and then starting having conversations on the right about who an adult provider could be. So even having conversations early on, interviewing the doctors, meeting with the doctors to make sure it would be a good fit before you actually transition your care. And this will just help you in doing that. This is the next page is basically the provider transfer plan. It's designed to help a clear communication about the transition between the caregiver, the former clinician, and the new clinician as much as possible. So this is completed by the current doctor. It goes over a medical summary. It goes over medications. It goes over quite a bit of things on the actual transfer of the patient. And so there's a lot that goes into that. And it's probably, I mean, it's pretty long. Most of it will be done by you, but a lot of it will be back checked by your clinician. And so it's a good thing to start once again early on. And so the last kind of thing that we address in the adult care toolkit is about legal and planning documents, which some of these things are really, really important when it comes to even your transition of care. So some of there's links, as you can see here to the right, with tons of legal and planning resources. And so part of that is also, we just entered into a partnership with a group called Protected Tomorrows. I'm not sure if anybody's familiar with them. Maybe not. They are a organization that has been around for a very long time with the founder's goal of helping families one-on-one with the legal process of special needs trust, guardianship, if there are any sort of medical, lawsuits or anything that you need legal support on, this organization provides that, and they have experts that provide that. So we just entered a partnership with them to where now any of our families can do a one-on-one consultation with them, get a special needs trust set up for free, get an ABLE account set up if that's what they want, start working through the guardian paperwork if they're at that point, understanding Social Security and what that looks like. And then we have pro bono lawyers all across the US. So when any of our families have anything that comes up that is education issues with IEP or whatever it may be, they can get also free counsel from lawyers across the US. And so we just announced that partnership a couple of weeks ago, and I know that they're going to be expanding that into other groups. And so I think it would be a really great thing for you guys to look into. I'm more than happy to connect you, but it's going to be a great resource for our families because those processes can become long and scary and confusing. And so having someone who has done it and has done it a lot to help kind of handhold you through that process, I think is going to be really, really remarkable for them. And so these are more legal and planning resources that we've worked on in the last 5 years that will be at your fingertips too, that we'll pass on to you. And that that is I wanted to do less slides and talk more. That is literally the kind of very high level version of the toolkit. I'm not sure, Amy, did they get a copy of the toolkit ahead of time?
I did not
Okay,
provide that. Yeah, but we definitely can, and I hope
yeah.
that,
let
that
me,
eventually
oh,
we're
go
able
ahead.
to rebrand this for us, because I think that would be amazing. Thank you so much for allowing us the opportunity.
Absolutely. You can definitely rebrand it. I'm going to really quickly give me 1 second. Let me reshare so I can show you a little bit more. Okay. So this is the actual toolkit. Can you guys see it okay? Yeah, okay. Like I said, it's like 51 pages long. But it is let me move this box over here and do this. I wanted to just give you a visual, like it is very comprehensive. I barely touched the surface of a lot of it. There's a lot of pro tips on here from our clinicians and some reminders. We talked about the questions to ask before you transfer. This kind of continues. And then we have the provider guide. So these are all, there's just so many different kind of really tricks and tools and tips in here that you will be able, like I said, I'll send this out tonight. And actually, if you want to even get it before then, like I said, all you have to do is go to angelman.org. The first page, if you go to at the bottom, there's an adult section. If you click that, you're going to come on every single resource um, for our caregivers, for our adults. So, like I said, super comprehensive, super long. I will make sure to get this all to you. Amy, I'll share everything with you so you can rebrand and do whatever you need. But I'm still learning a lot. Like I said, my son's 10. And I keep like every year, my New Year's resolution is to start a special needs trust, and shame on me. Like I still haven't, but I have an appointment set up with this new group to hopefully get that moving. But there's just a lot to think about. And what we hear over and over again in our community is obviously these families wish they had these resources a long time ago, because it would have made this journey so much easier and so much lighter for them. I have found, especially in the last month or two, with a lot of changes happening across the US when it comes to Medicaid changes state by state, waiver changes state by state. I always wondered when I first started this role, I would get a lot of phone calls from families who had adults living with Angelman syndrome, and they were just angry, upset, mad. And I always wondered, like, what did I do? Like but now that I've gone through, like, we lost in Indiana, they just removed people from Medicaid. Like literally just like, you didn't turn in a paperwork, which wasn't true, took us off. And I had a moment of like clarity of like, well, no wonder these families are so angry. They have had to fight tooth and nail for so many years, for so long, with no one helping, no support whatsoever. And so I get it. And so I'm hoping some of these tools take off a little bit of that burden for them as they move forward. So I see a lot of questions or talk in the chat. Did I miss any questions that came up in the chat?
No question so far. It was more us chatting about the
Oh,
age of our
good.
children, and then we had one parent that was confused because she said, "I thought this was about KDM5C." We said, "No, no, no, it is.
I love
It
it.
applies." So yeah, but there have not been any questions so far. But I would love to open it up for questions if you're ready, and
Yeah,
see if any,
absolutely.
and I just wanted to echo too, with my daughter having just turned 19 in her teens, what you were saying about some providers will see them well past, whatever their age limit is. All of her specialists that I know and trust, I started saying, "How long are you going to see her?" And almost all of them said, "Until I retire." So
Which is
that was
unbelievable.
so reassuring, and just kind of, because I think that was my biggest fear, is like, how do I just switch her to somebody that doesn't know anything about her? So just
Yeah.
ask is going to be
Yeah.
my little piece of advice based on echoing what you said. So
100%, because if you know early on that's great, then you can just continue working, but knowing that that doctor may retire, so what
right,
will that transition look like?
right.
But for the hospital, like knowing, like for us in Indiana, I have till 21. So what is my plan going to be? I know now he's 10. We need to be thinking about that as we move forward.
definitely.
And I see a lot of other younger families on the line too, which makes me happy because that means that you're thinking about it and planning early on.
Yeah, my husband's on the call too, by the way.
Oh,
We
hi,
just,
Stephen.
so our son is almost 10. We just had our first meeting with like financial planner. She introduced us to a lawyer to do the special needs trust. And I was thinking, oh my gosh, he's only 10. We have all this time. And they echo the same thing that you said, but like this is the time when you need to start planning. So
Hmm.
I'm like, oh, okay, at least the universe is like aligning for me to somehow be having all these conversations right now because I
Yeah.
need to get on it. And we have a session at the conference too,
Oh, good.
where this organization, you may know them. They're called Our Aging Services. They're in
Yeah,
Illinois, and they're going to bring a bunch of handouts and like the binder and the
that's
whole thing
awesome.
for some of our families to really like dig in during one of the workshops. So, but it is quite overwhelming. And I
Hmm.
almost feel like we need to have not like book club, but just like work sessions or something where we get together and we're like, okay,
Yeah,
what are we working on? And it's like there's so in this call, there's like a lot that are in the 10 to 13 range here. And then there's like a group that are in the kind of already like just did all of this, right? Like
yeah,
the reaching the 18 to 20-year-olds that are like reaching adulthood already. And I think we have probably a huge cohort that's in like the age range of like my son and Heather's son,
yeah.
that need
Well,
kind of need to start like looking at some of this stuff.
yeah, the conference is a great place to do that. And it's funny because you mentioned like you need to like hunker down like almost like a book club, right? To get these done. And we actually started changing our sessions at the conference that they're working small groups with the Protected Tomorrows crew. So one person will sit down with two or three people and start talking about starting your special needs trust. Let's start writing, like let's start thinking through this. Let's do all these things. And so they left with tangibles because all of this sounds good when we're on the phone talking about it, or when you're in conference, you get really, really jazzed up. You're like, I'm going to do this, and this. You go home, life hits you, and it doesn't happen. So being able to do some of that at the conference, to be able to say I've got at least a chunk of it. And then the other thing that I always bring up too of the importance behind all of this, at least from my perspective, is Jackson has a twin brother, Baden. Baden does not live with Angelman syndrome. We don't have any other kids. And he is 10 years old. And even before 10 years old, he was talking about taking care of Jackson long term. And that is not anything that my husband or I, would ever expect, demand, or ask of him. If he decides he wants to do that, then we will have everything hopefully set up and ready for them. But we do not want him to feel like he has to take on that responsibility at 10 years old or even beyond. So it's like, to us, we're not only doing it for Jackson, we're doing it for Baden, because it's only fair that we involve him in these conversations, that he knows that we have a plan, whether it involves him or not. I think that's really, really important from the sibling perspective. And we heard that a lot from our adult siblings in the community of like, I wish my parents would have just talked to me about it. They didn't talk to me. Like, and here we are, right? And I don't know what to do, kind of thing.
My 15-year-old daughter just asked the same question last night.
Yeah.
She said, am I going to be taking care of Gabby? And I said, it's up to you. Obviously, if you're able to help her with making doctor's appointments and, managing her medication, maybe that'd be great because you already know all of that. But, we will never expect that of you.
He heard me talking about him. No, I mean, but I think I always say siblings are like the unsung heroes of, of these communities, because they just are built for something different. I truly think they're just remarkable humans. So that's just me.
I have a question. What is the difference between like a special needs trust and like an ABLE account?
So an able account, and I'm there's probably better ways to explain it, but I will tell you from what I understand. An able account is almost like the college, smart college funds that you can set up that are not it's not taxed. It doesn't penalize your, like, for Medicaid, you can only make a certain amount of money. This pot doesn't penalize that pot of money, right? Like it doesn't count towards it. And you can only put so much into an ABLE account. And so we just started our ABLE account for Jackson last year. And so at Christmas, birthdays, whatever, people gift into that ABLE account. And the special needs trust is like a bigger umbrella. So the ABLE account is part of that because that's some money that will come in to support Jackson if needed. So it's the ABLE account is just another kind of avenue in order to raise support or raise dollars for your loved one that won't penalize you. But there's also restrictions of what you can spend that money on. Especially, like I said, special needs trust is bigger. You talk about, putting together the financial support. You look at also the will part of it and what that looks like. So when you do a special needs trust, a lot of times the lawyers will say, we need to do a will. If you haven't done a will, you need to do a will right along with it. In order for the will to have some mandates on that special needs trust on who benefits from it or who's the kind of the guardian of that moving forward. And so there is on the links that I shared, there is literally a step-by-step guide on what you need to think about and what you need to have when you start talking about special needs trust. And with an ABLE account, it took me maybe 5 minutes to set it up. It's super easy. Like I said, you get like even a tax write-off for it. If you start an ABLE account or a college fund, you get to put that, you get some sort of credit towards taxes. But it's just a really great way for you to start raising long-term support.
Okay, cool. Interesting.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, of course.
My son is going to be 13 in a couple weeks, and all of this is very overwhelming
Yeah.
and daunting and
Yeah, I get it.
slightly upsetting.
I,
Like I don't want
I,
to have to deal with any of these things that you're talking about.
no, I agree. And I think that, I mean, I still feel that in my bones a lot, right? There's moments where I feel like a lot of the despair from it, but then there's moments where I feel a lot of the sense of urgency from it, like the fear of like, what if I don't get it done? Um, I mean, all I can tell you is take one thing, take one thing you want to accomplish in the next 6 to 12 months. When it could just be setting up an ABLE account, then you did it. Like, don't like what we see our parents fail at is when they're like, we're going to do all these things in the next 6 months. And then it becomes daunting and overwhelming because, by the way, you're also running to therapy 4 or 5 times a week. Your child has a seizure and goes into status, and then you're out for a month. I mean, there's so many things that compound that, right? So I think you just have to, give yourself grace, Heather, through that those feelings will definitely continue to happen. But
Yes, one step at a time. Good
you made the
advice.
right step by coming and just hearing about it tonight,
Yeah,
right?
definitely. I'm interested to see the map. You said something about a
Yeah,
map of like
yeah,
homes that
homes.
have been that your community has found that
Yeah,
have
we have
worked
that.
well for everyone. Like
We've
that's
done that, and we're also
amazing.
working with I'll find the link and send it to you, Amy, and you can give it out. There's a link, there's an organization, it's an autism organization, but all they do is find these type of living, like, I think the challenge with long-term living for a lot of our loved ones is there's nothing that really fits our loved ones. They like, from at least from the Angelman perspective, you can do a nursing home where they just sedate our children and they just lay around all day, which is unacceptable. Or the family right now is taking care of them till they're 90, and it's just not good. There was a lot of situations. There's limited places in the US where they have these really great living situations that meet the needs of our children, right? Of our loved ones. And so that's the one thing our goal was, is can we find all those places first, right? Like the places that have worked for our community, and then partner with other organizations that are finding these locations as well and start kind of filling them out and adding them to the map as we go. But this autism organization has a very large map as well and found different living situations that have worked for them. And we went through all of them, and a lot of them are quite remarkable. I think the one thing that gave me a lot of hope was, in my mind, it feels like there's nothing out there. But when you start digging in and really investigating and learning about what people have done to meet kind of these needs, there are some really great options out there. I wish it wouldn't mean that people would have to move, like, states or whatever it may be, but I think we'll see that change a bit. But there are a lot of options out there that I think will meet the needs of our individuals. But I'll make sure to share that map with you, both of those maps, so you have those. But yeah, I've been on so many phone calls lately with families that have been like, there's nothing here, so I'm going to create it. And they get together with 5 or 6 other families. They, buy a large home, and all those individuals live with each other, and all their insurance combined can bring in 24-hour care, and it works. And that gives me hives, thinking, especially with the crisis of caregivers and care and respite, like how much turnover you would have. But it seems to work for some people.
And then we have a question in the chat that says we were planning to do a trust. Is a special trust still needed in that case?
As long as your will identifies what that trust is supposed to be focused towards, I I don't think it's needed. I think the difference between a special needs trust and a trust is it's probably very small. I would ask whoever you set your trust up with, or if you have a financial planner, ask them if there's a benefit to adding any particular language into the trust that is more focused towards your loved one. But your will should stipulate a lot of that as well, of what that trust needs to do.
Thank you.
Of course. And good for you already having a trust.
Anyone else have any questions? All right.
Not a question,
Yeah.
just a deep appreciation for you sharing this. I think the first time I came across this, you shared it, or somebody shared it in the rare epilepsy group, and
right.
everybody was like, "Oh my gosh, this is just like a gold mine of information." And I can't believe they're just so generously like offering it to other organizations, but that's like what we need more of in this space,
100%.
is to not have to recreate the wheel. So we're just so grateful. And I
Yeah.
will eventually get to like making it pretty in our own way and putting it up on our website. But in the meantime, like everything you need is there,
Yeah, it is. And if you find anything else on our website that you want, it's yours. I think the one thing that I agree with you, I think that if we had organizations like kind of like ours that are doing some of the work and handing it over 30 years ago, I don't know how farther along we would be. And I will also say we are incredibly blessed as an organization. And so, I can't imagine not having these tools and walking this journey. So I don't need to hoard or like get credit for or whatever. Like, you take it, you make it yours, make it pretty, brand it, put your kids on there, your adults, and it's completely yours. And I'm more than happy to answer any other calls or be there to support you guys and cheer you guys on in the process.
We appreciate that so much.
course.
Thank you.
Of course. And Amy, I will get you, I'll actually sit right now, put together an email with everything so you can get it out to everybody. But like I said, if you go to angelman.org, first page adults, you can land on all the resources right there.
Wonderful. Thank you.
Awesome. Of course. Thank you guys for having me.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.